There's a moment that changes everything between a man and a woman. It's not a moment she announces. It's not something she says out loud. It's something she feels. A quiet shift in how she sees you, and once it happens, there's no going back to how things were before. Most men spend years trying to understand women through guessing, through trial and error, through advice that sounds good but falls apart the second real emotions get involved. They read her mixed signals, her silence, her mood changes, and they react instead of understanding. And because of that, she keeps seeing them the same way: predictable, manageable, easy to figure out. But there's one specific understanding, one shift in perspective that changes the entire dynamic the moment a man actually grasps it. It's not a line, it's not a trick, it's not something you say to impress her. It's something you understand so deeply that it changes the way you carry yourself, the way you respond to her, the way you exist in the relationship, and she notices it almost immediately, even if she can't explain why. This isn't about manipulation. This isn't about games, tricks, or trying to control how she feels about you. This is about a real psychological truth that most men never learn, one that, once understood, makes it impossible for her to see you the way she used to. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what this is, why it works on such a deep level, and how to actually live it instead of just knowing it. Stay until the end, because the last part of this video is the piece that ties everything together, and it's the part most men skip. Let's get into it. Before we go on, everything I teach on this channel, every reason, every truth, it's a map. But a map only takes you so far. At some point, you have to actually walk the road. That road is the community. It's where men stop collecting insight and start collecting proof. Proof that they can hold their frame, master their emotions, and build the kind of presence that doesn't need to perform. You don't rent this. You own it. One decision, made once, and every course, every future lesson, every tool we ever release, yours permanently. No renewals, no countdown. Just a door that opens once and stays open. If you're tired of almost changing, the link is below. Walk through it. Now, let's begin. Section 1. The misconception that keeps men stuck. Most men believe that understanding women means predicting them, figuring out the right thing to say, the right time to text, the right way to react so she doesn't get upset. They treat it like a formula. Say this, get that, do this, avoid that. I remember hearing about a guy who spent almost 2 years doing exactly that. Every time his girlfriend seemed distant, he'd immediately ask what was wrong. Every time she went quiet, he'd send 3 follow-up texts trying to smooth things over. He genuinely believed that if he just stayed one step ahead of her moods, he could keep the relationship safe. But the opposite happened. The more he tried to manage her emotions, the more she pulled away. Not because she didn't care, but because she started to feel like she was dating someone who needed her to be okay, more than he needed to actually know her. One night she said something that stuck with him. She told him, "I don't need you to fix how I feel. I need you to just exist next to me while I feel it." At the time, he didn't fully understand it. Looking back, he said it was the moment everything started to shift. That's the misconception right there. Men are taught, directly or indirectly, that understanding a woman means controlling the emotional temperature of the relationship, smoothing things over, fixing her mood, keeping the peace at all costs. But that's not understanding, that's management, and on some level, women can always tell the difference. Here's the emotional truth. When a man is constantly trying to manage how a woman feels, she stops feeling understood and starts feeling handled. And being handled, even gently, even with good intentions, doesn't create closeness. It creates distance because it turns her emotions into a problem that needs solving instead of an experience that's allowed to exist. Psychologically, this connects to something simple but powerful. People, in general, don't want their emotions fixed as much as they want them witnessed. When someone rushes to fix how you feel, it can unconsciously communicate that your feelings are inconvenient, something to be resolved quickly so things can go back to normal. But when someone can sit with your emotions without trying to change them, it communicates something much deeper. I'm not afraid of what you're feeling, and I'm not going anywhere because of it. The mature correction here isn't to become passive or emotionally checked out. It's not about not caring when she's upset. It's about learning the difference between comforting someone and trying to control their emotional state so you feel more comfortable. Takeaway. Real understanding doesn't come from predicting a woman's moods and managing them. It comes from being steady enough to let her feel what she feels without needing to fix it, just to protect your own peace. Section 2. Why she tests you without meaning to. Here's something almost no one explains properly. Sometimes a woman isn't testing you on purpose. She's not sitting there thinking, let me see if he passes. But her behavior still ends up testing you anyway, because on some level she's trying to answer a question she can't ask directly. Is this a man who can hold his ground, or is this a man I'll have to manage forever? I remember hearing about a woman who, early in a relationship, would get quiet and a little short whenever she was overwhelmed with work. Not cold, not angry, just distant for a day or two. The guy she was seeing at the time used to panic every single time it happened. He'd ask if she was mad at him, apologize for things he hadn't even done, and try to talk his way back into her good mood. She later admitted that those moments actually made her trust him less, not because his intentions were bad, but because it showed her that her mood could knock him off balance that easily. Years later, she dated someone else. Same pattern happened. She got quiet during a stressful week. But this time, the man she was with didn't panic. He didn't ask if she was mad. He just said something simple like, "Take the space you need, I'm here when you're ready," and went about his day, not coldly, just calmly. She said that moment, more than any grand gesture anyone had ever done for her, made her feel safer than she'd ever felt in a relationship. That's the pattern most men miss. It's not that she wants a man who ignores her moods. It's that she wants a man whose sense of stability doesn't depend on her mood staying pleasant. When you can stay grounded while she's not okay, it tells her something powerful. That she doesn't have to perform happiness to keep you close, and that she won't lose you the moment she's difficult to be around. The psychology behind this is tied to what's called attachment security. People, especially those with some anxious attachment patterns, unconsciously test stability in relationships, not out of manipulation, but because past experiences taught them that people leave or panic or punish them when things aren't perfect. When a man responds to her hard moments with calm instead of chaos, it starts to rewrite that expectation, one small moment at a time. Now, the mature correction, because this matters. This isn't about being emotionally unavailable or pretending her feelings don't matter. Calm doesn't mean cold. You can check in, you can care, you can ask if she's okay, once, gently, without spiraling into fixing mode. The difference is whether your inner peace depends on her answer. Takeaway. She's not testing you to see if you'll jump through hoops. She's unconsciously watching to see if you're the kind of man whose calm can hold steady even when she isn't calm herself. And that steadiness, more than any romantic gesture, is what actually earns trust. Section 3. The part most men get completely wrong. This is the piece that ties into the intro. The part most men skip because it feels counterintuitive. Most men think that the way to win a woman's respect is to prove themselves. Prove their loyalty, prove their effort, prove how much they care. But there's a specific point where proving yourself stops building respect and starts quietly destroying it. I remember a story about a guy who did everything right on paper. He planned thoughtful dates, remembered small details, showed up for every single thing that mattered to her. But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like generosity and started feeling like a performance he was putting on to earn her approval. She could feel it, the subtle neediness underneath all that effort. It wasn't, "I want to do this for you." It became, "Please notice how much I'm doing, so you don't leave." Eventually, she told him something he never forgot. "I don't feel wanted by you. I feel needed by you. And those aren't the same thing." He was confused for a long time after that. He thought giving more, trying harder, proving himself more consistently was the answer. But she wasn't pulling away because he wasn't doing enough. She was pulling away because everything he did had an invisible string attached to it, a quiet expectation that his effort should be met with her staying, her loving him back, her never pulling away. Here's the emotional truth. Proving yourself to someone over and over doesn't communicate confidence. It communicates fear. Fear that if you stop proving, they'll stop choosing you. And on some level, people can always sense that fear, even when it's hidden behind kindness and effort. Psychologically, this connects to what's sometimes called approval-seeking behavior. When someone's actions are driven by the need for reassurance, it creates an emotional undertone of anxiety, even if the actions themselves look generous. And attraction, especially long-term attraction, tends to move towards stability, not away from it. A woman may appreciate the effort in the moment, but what she remembers, what she's drawn to long-term, is whether being around you felt calm or whether it felt like she had to keep reassuring you that you were enough. The mature correction isn't to stop being generous, thoughtful, or effortful. It's to make sure your actions come from wanting to give, not from needing something back in return. There's a real difference between "I want to make you happy" and "I need you to be happy with me so I feel secure." Takeaway. The moment you understand this, that your value was never something you had to keep proving, is the moment she stops seeing you as someone trying to earn her. She starts seeing you as someone who simply is enough without needing her to confirm it. And that shift, more than anything else in this video, is the one she'll never forget once she feels it. Section 4. Why this understanding changes how she talks about you to others. There's a detail most men never think about. What happens when a woman talks about you when you're not in the room, not to flatter you, not because she's trying to convince anyone of anything. Just the small, offhand way she describes you to a friend, a sister, a co-worker. That description says more about how she actually sees you than almost anything she'll say to your face. I remember hearing about a woman describing two very different men from her past to a friend. About the first one, she said, "He was sweet but exhausting. I always felt like I had to manage how he felt about everything." About the second, she said something completely different. "Being around him was easy. I never had to wonder where I stood." She wasn't trying to compliment either of them. She was just describing what it felt like to exist near them. That's the part most men never connect. Once a man internalizes that his worth doesn't depend on her reassurance, once he stops needing to be managed emotionally and stops needing to manage her emotionally in return, the entire texture of the relationship changes. It stops feeling like work. And when something stops feeling like work, people talk about it differently, even without realizing they're doing it. Here's the emotional truth. Women don't just remember what a man did. They remember what it felt like to be around him. Tense, heavy, uncertain, or calm, light, steady. And that feeling becomes the story she tells herself, and eventually the story she tells other people, whether she means to or not. Psychologically, this ties into something called emotional contagion, the tendency for people to unconsciously absorb the emotional state of those close to them. If a man carries anxiety, insecurity, or a constant undercurrent of needing reassurance, she absorbs that, even if he never says a word about it. If he carries calm, steadiness, and quiet self-assurance, she absorbs that too. Over time, that absorbed feeling becomes inseparable from how she experiences the relationship itself. The mature correction here isn't to perform calm for an audience, or to start acting a certain way because you want her to describe you well to other people. That's just another version of performing for approval, the exact thing we already covered. The real shift happens internally, quietly, without an audience in mind at all. It just becomes who you are, not something you display. Takeaway. Once you stop needing to be understood and start simply being steady, she doesn't just see you differently. She describes you differently, even when you're not there to hear it. And that shift in how she talks about you, more than any words you could ever say to her directly, is proof that she'll genuinely never see you the same way again. Section 5. How to actually live this, not just understand it. Understanding something in your head and actually living it are two very different things. A lot of men will watch a video like this, agree with every word, and then go right back to their old patterns the next time she goes quiet or seems distant. Not because they didn't understand it, because understanding alone isn't enough to change a habit that's been running on autopilot for years. I remember a story about a guy who said this exact thing happened to him. He'd read about emotional steadiness, watched videos about it, even talked about it with friends, like he had it figured out. But the very next time his partner seemed off after a long day, his old instinct kicked in immediately. The need to ask what was wrong, to fix it, to make sure everything was okay before he could relax. He caught himself mid-sentence, actually stopped, and just said, "I don't need to fix this right now." Not because it felt natural, because he made a conscious choice in that exact moment to interrupt the old pattern. That's the part nobody talks about enough. The first few times you practice this, it won't feel calm. It'll feel uncomfortable, almost like you're doing something wrong by not rushing in to smooth things over. That discomfort is normal. It doesn't mean the understanding is wrong. It means you're unlearning a habit your nervous system has practiced for a long time. Here's the emotional truth. Real change doesn't happen the moment you understand something. It happens in the small, repeated moments where you choose the new response instead of the old one, even when the old one feels more natural. Every time you resist the urge to fix her mood, prove your loyalty, or manage the relationship out of fear, you're building a new pattern, one rep at a time. Psychologically, this is simple neuroplasticity in action. The brain doesn't rewire itself because you understood a concept intellectually. It rewires through repetition, through choosing the new behavior enough times that it eventually becomes the automatic one, replacing the old default. The mature correction here is patience with yourself. You will slip back into old habits sometimes. You'll catch yourself over-explaining, over-checking, over-managing. That doesn't erase the progress. It just means you're human and you get another chance the next time it comes up. Takeaway. This understanding only becomes real the moment you start practicing it in the actual uncomfortable moments, not the calm ones. That's where she'll start to feel the difference. Not because you told her something changed, but because something in you actually did. In short, let's bring this all together. This was never about learning a trick to say the right thing at the right moment. It was about something much deeper. Understanding that a woman doesn't fall for men who manage her emotions, prove themselves constantly, or perform calm for an audience. She's drawn to men who are genuinely steady, whose sense of self doesn't rise and fall with her mood, and whose worth was never something that needed her approval to feel real. We talked about how trying to manage her emotions creates distance instead of closeness. We talked about how she unconsciously tests stability, not to catch you failing, but to see if you're safe to be vulnerable around. We talked about the quiet trap of proving yourself and how it often communicates fear instead of confidence. We talked about how this steadiness changes the way she describes you to others, even when you're not in the room. And we talked about the hardest part, actually living this in the uncomfortable moments, not just understanding it in theory. That's the shift. Once a man genuinely embodies this, not performs it, embodies it, she doesn't just notice a difference. She feels it in a way she can't fully explain, and she starts seeing him through a completely different lens. Not because he changed to impress her, because he stopped needing her permission to feel whole. If this gave you a new way to understand this dynamic, let me know in the comments. Was there a specific moment when you realized someone's calm, steady presence changed how you saw them? And if you want more breakdowns like this, real psychology, real self-respect, no games, hit subscribe. New videos on female psychology and emotional mastery drop regularly, and you won't want to miss the next one. I'll see you in the next one.